Good evening, my friends. Elon Musk wants to buy Twitter, and his desire to champion free speech is admirable. Experts are sounding the alarm as the WHO proposes sanctions on countries disobeying pandemic response rules. Soaring inflation fueled by reckless spending will come to bite Democrats in the November 2022 midterms. Okay, my friends, let's take a closer look together. Welcome to Veracity. I'm your host, Michael Lewis. Now, before we begin, I have to thank today's sponsor. Our sponsor for today's episode is all the amazing and kind-hearted people who have taken their hard-earned money and contributed to the show. I don't take it for granted, so I want to say thank you very much. And if you want to become a member and help contribute to the show, then click the link in the description and become a member and help me on my mission to deliver truthful news. The uncertain air hovering around the Biden administration about losing its trust in the eyes of citizens has become more evident than ever. CNBC poll an economics professor from Hillsdale College and the astonishing shift of Florida voters from Democrats to Republicans in the last few months proves that Democrats will be standing alone in the upcoming November elections. Now, to start, let's look at some hard-to-ignore facts. A recent poll conducted by CNBC has found that only 38% of Americans approve that they are satisfied with the Biden administration's work. Moreover, the percentage has come down from 48% in July last year and 41% in December. On the other hand, a majority of 53% of Americans are now found to be entirely against President Biden's decision-making power. According to Professor Ivan Pogasic from Hillside College, the Democrats have blindly distributed new money into the economy, which has become the leading cause of inflation. At the end of 2021, Miami-Dade had 594,924 registered Democrats. However, on April 1st, 2022, registered Democrats stood at 585,882, which shows a loss of around 9,000 Democratic voters in just 3 months. On a recent podcast with Joe Rogan, famous actor and comedian Bill Maher expressed that Democrats will lose historically during the November election. When asked about his reasoning for this statement, he said that the Democrats had abandoned the concept of common sense. The only thing that could help Democrats win the upcoming election is if the Republicans decide to sabotage or destroy their own elections. Professor Ivan Pogasic also raised some interesting points about the weak economic skills of the Biden administration. To normalize the rising demand for loans and keep the interest rate under control, the Federal Reserve distributed new money to the banks in return to buying Treasury bonds from them. As the banks' cash reserves increased, they were able to issue more loans, thus increasing the cash flow in the market and hitting record-breaking inflation. However, the situation worsened when the Biden administration, instead of issuing Treasury bonds to the public to recover their money distributed to the banks, further sold those Treasury bonds in return for issuing no money. This, in the end, resulted in cash flow beyond deadlines that are now putting pressure on the budget of every consumer. Vance Jin, who was the Associated Director for Economic Policy at the White House from 2019 to 2020, also pointed out that the Biden administration cannot shift the blame of their actions on the Ukraine-Russia war. It should be remembered that strong environmental measures towards setting up oil companies and cancellation of the Keystone XL pipeline project happened before the war. Not to forget, imposing higher taxes on giant corporations to relieve the government's burden could also backfire in the form of low wages and fewer jobs from such companies, thus imposing more pressure on the consumer from every angle. Twitter has extraordinary potential. I will unlock it. The richest man in the world has now forced the entire Twitter board to bite their nails with his recent offer. The statement was written in a letter addressed by Elon Musk to Twitter chairman Brett Taylor on April 14th. When the chairman further read the letter, he was astonished to read the offer made by Mr. Musk to buy 100% of Twitter with a gigantic $43 billion at $54.20 per share in cash. Well, after reading such an offer, it's not easy for the entire board to ignore such a statement. The company responded by stating that they had received the unsolicited, non-binding proposal from Musk and are carefully reviewing it. According to credible sources, the company is evaluating the offer under the guidance of leading investment bank Goldman Sachs and Wilson Sonsini, Goodrich & Rosati. Being a firm believer in free speech, Musk is now planning to transform Twitter into a private company so that everyone can express their views without their account being blocked arbitrarily. In the letter, he expressed that since becoming the company's largest shareholder, he has now realized that Twitter will neither thrive nor serve the ultimate social objective in its current form. Because of this, he wants it to be transformed into a private company to ensure free speech. While speaking recently at the TED 2022 event, Musk openly stated that free speech is important to the future of civilization. A good sign of whether there's free speech is when someone you do not like is allowed to say something you don't like. If that is the case, then we have free speech. And it's damn annoying when someone you don't like says something you don't like. That is a sign of a healthy, functioning free speech situation. However, as the Twitter board was close to getting convinced by imagining Musk's offer, they had now been hit with a giant speed bump when one of the largest and long-term shareholders, Prince Al Walid, rejected his offer. The Saudi Arabian prince tweeted on his Twitter account stating, "I don't believe that the proposed offer by Elon Musk of $54.20 per share comes close to the intrinsic value of Twitter given its growth prospects. Being one of the largest and long-term shareholders of Twitter, I reject this offer." Nevertheless, it should be remembered what Musk stated at the end of the addressed letter. He said, "My offer is my best and final offer, and if it is not accepted, I would need to reconsider my position as a shareholder." When asked at the TED conference about Plan B if Twitter rejects his offer, he said with a sarcastic smile, "There is." After China failed to share early information about the beginning of COVID-19, the German health minister Jens Spahn introduced a pandemic treaty which allows WHO to impose sanctions on countries that fail to follow its directions. Backed by Germany and 24 other countries, the move came as a stark response to China not allowing the WHO officials to investigate the origins of the coronavirus in its country. A group of scholars, including the London School of Economics, also raised the idea suggesting that economic sanctions or denial of benefits should be exercised on unfriendly countries. However, many officials and experts are sounding the alarm that giving too much power to WHO could also infiltrate the national sovereignty of a country, which could later also result in severe consequences. With the United States rejecting the proposals of this treaty, the opposing countries have suggested the strengthening of the WHO regulations. Nick Corbishley, a famous author, has warned that the Chinese Communist Party has intentionally developed a special relationship with the WHO head, Tedros, that could result in biased actions. He also revealed that Tedros grabbed the top post of WHO only with support from the Chinese Communist Party. Sunday Times columnist Rebecca Myers also said, in 2017, Chinese diplomats had campaigned hard for Tedros, using Beijing's financial clout and OPEC aid budget to build support for him among developing countries. Former Clinton campaign lawyer Michael Sussman could soon land in prison for making a false statement claiming Trump's links with the Russian banks just 2 months before the 2016 elections. Because the U.S. District Judge Christopher Cooper has now rejected Michael's request to dismiss the case filed against him for making such false statements, Special Counsel John Durham has charged Michael under Section 1001 of the U.S. Code, which states that whoever makes a false statement or false representation will be punished with a fine and be imprisoned for 5 years. And if the offense involves international or domestic terrorism, he could be imprisoned for 8 years. If we rewind to Michael's actions, he held a secret meeting with the then FBI General Counsel, James Baker, 2 months before the 2016 presidential election. During the meeting, he not only made falsified claims against Trump's connections with the Russian Alpha Bank, but also clarified that he was not revealing this statement on anyone's behalf. However, the experts later found that Michael was acting on behalf of Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign and charged hefty fees from them for taking such actions to ensure Trump would lose. As the trial will begin in May this year, the judge will decide whether Michael's statements influenced the FBI to initiate an investigation against the Trump campaign or not. The Republican National Committee, RNC, agreed Thursday to withdraw from the Commission on Presidential Debates, CPD, echoing former President Trump, who has repeatedly leveled accusations of anti-Republican bias against the group. So as a result of their withdrawal, all future candidates for president and vice president will have to sign a pledge that they will not participate in primary or general election debates that aren't RNC approved. RNC Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel said, "Debates are an important part of the democratic process, and the RNC is committed to free and fair debates." She went on to say, "The Commission on Presidential Debates is biased and has refused to enact simple and common sense reforms to help ensure fair debates, including hosting debates before voting begins and selecting moderators who have never worked for candidates on the debate stage." You need to know that the RNC didn't make this decision overnight. In January, McDaniel and the RNC issued a letter to the Commission calling it a warning for its lack of action in addressing Republican concerns. Here, let me read what was in the letter. The RNC commits to ensuring that its subsequent presidential candidates have an equal opportunity to discuss their opposition. The RNC would take every opportunity to ensure that upcoming Republican presidential candidates are given this opportunity over there as long as the CPD seems determined. The RNC has a duty to ensure that its future presidential nominees have the opportunity to debate their opponents on a level playing field. So long as the CPD appears intent on stonewalling the meaningful reforms necessary to reform its credibility with the Republican Party as a fair and nonpartisan actor, the RNC will take every step to ensure that future Republican presidential nominees are given that opportunity elsewhere. Accordingly, the RNC will initiate the process of amending the rules of the Republican Party at our upcoming winter meeting to prohibit future Republican nominees from participating in CBD-sponsored debates. The RNC highlighted several concerns, but the Commission either didn't take the RNC's warning seriously or simply didn't care. As a result, the RNC voted to withdraw from the biased CPD, and we are going to find newer, better debate platforms to ensure that future nominees are not forced to go through the biased CPD in order to make their case to the American people. It makes complete sense for the Republican National Committee to remove themselves from a process that has demonstrated to be unfavorable to Republican candidates, virtually indistinguishable from the rest of the biased mainstream media. The truth of the matter is that the CPD chose to simply not take a look into the concerns presented by the RNC, demonstrating that trying to improve the existing model was not a reasonable solution, and going around existing institutions to force a change became the best course of action looking ahead to 2024. And that's it for today, my friends. Don't forget to like and share, and most importantly, join our member site and support the mission to deliver truthful information. I'd rather depend on the generosity of you, people I can trust, than ever be dependent on YouTube again. Thank you all for spending time with me, and I'll see you next time.